Mr. Speaker.
Hello everyone, how's it going? We are back, we are live, and we are ready to go to Prime Minister's questions. So, as I said, we're a few minutes late. We are a few minutes late today due to the Dominic Cummings session beforehand, but we're live, we're back, we're on, we're here, and it's time for Prime Minister's questions. No foreplay today, we're just right into it.
The thoughts of the House will be with the family and friends of the Hillsborough 96 and the hundreds more who are injured following the decision by the court this morning.
There's a story that's annoying.
I know that the CPS has said they will meet with the families again to answer any questions they may have. Mr. Speaker, I know colleagues from across the House will want to join me in paying tribute to our former colleague Mike Weatherly, who sadly died last week. He was a dedicated parliamentarian and a fantastic servant to the people of home.
F's in the chat for
Mr.
the
Speaker,
guy.
This morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others in addition to my duties.
I don't mean to
in
be
this
disrespectful,
House.
I've got no idea who it is you just mentioned.
Let's go to Dr. Dan Poulter. Dan.
Where's our call list, actually?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I draw the House's attention to my declaration of members' interests as a practising NHS doctor who's been working on the front line of the NHS during the pandemic. Now, my right honourable friend will be aware that the 2012 Health and Social Care Act resulted in local authority commissioning of addiction services, and 10 years later, almost all addiction services are now run by non-NHS providers. The result is that the numbers in alcohol treatment have fallen, many alcohol detoxes take place in an unplanned manner, and both opiate and alcohol deaths are at record levels. Would my right honourable friend agree with me that for the sake of patients,
one of them.
we
We're
must
starting
bring
with a bonus
commissioning of
question.
addiction
Oh my
services
God.
back to the NHS? And will he meet with me and experts in this field to discuss how we can get this right?
Decriminalise
I want
drugs.
to thank my honourable friend for everything
Simple
that
as
he's
that.
done throughout this pandemic in the NHS, but also for raising this vital issue. And of course, I'm proud that we're seeing the biggest increase under this government in treatment for substance abuse for 15 years. The specific points he raises, we will make sure that we address with Dame Carol Black, who is undertaking a review on drugs and treatment, and we will make sure that his point is fed in.
Whatever that was. He didn't even make a point. Like, sorry, before Keir stands up, Dr. Dan Poulter didn't even make a point there. He just said, do you agree with me? He just asked him a question. He made no point.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I
It's Keir time. Oh, sorry, my mic is blaring today. I do apologise.
Mr. Speaker, this morning the Prime Minister's former closest advisor said, when the public needed us most, the government failed. Does the Prime Minister agree with that?
Does he agree? Did you fail, Prime Minister?
Mr. Speaker, the handling of this pandemic has been one of the most difficult things this country has had to do for a very long time. And none of the decisions have been easy. To go into a lockdown.
So he's basically saying yes, he's not denying it.
To deal with a pandemic on this scale has been appallingly difficult, and we've at every step
Very interesting that he's not denying
minimise
this.
loss of life, to save lives, to protect the NHS, and we have followed the best scientific advice that we can.
I mean, he didn't answer the question there.
Mr. Speaker, can I remind the Prime Minister that 1 year ago, almost
Can you remind him to
he
answer
described
bloody
his
questions?
former advisor as, in his words, in every respect, acting responsibly, legally and with integrity. This morning, that same advisor has said that senior ministers fell, his words, disastrously short of the standards.
I mean, I think
that
one of the
public has a
biggest
right to
claims
expect of
that
its
Cummings has
government.
made today was that
And
Matt
that lives
Hancock
were
lied
lost
and
as
should
a
have been
result.
sacked 15 different times.
Does the Prime Minister accept that central allegation and that his
Come on,
inaction
Bojo, what are you saying?
led to needless deaths?
It's true. It's absolutely true.
No, Mr. Speaker, and
What
of course
a
all those
tit.
matters will be reviewed in the course of the
Oh,
public
what an
inquiry
idiot.
that I have announced. I noticed that he is fixated.
See what annoys me about what he just did there, right? From March 2020, Boris Johnson has told us all via the BBC and every media channel that would listen that the full blame lies at his feet. For anything that happens, whatever people have to be blamed for, the blame lies at him. And now, when his second in charge has literally said that, yeah, the blame lies with us, he's now saying, no, it's not.
As ever
Whoa,
on the,
what a guy.
on the rear
What
view
a
mirror.
guy.
Mr. Speaker, whilst we on this side of the House are getting on with our job of rolling out
What
the
job?
vaccines, making sure that we protect the people of this country, and that I think has been the decisive
Protect the
development on
people
which I
of
think
the country.
people are rightly focusing, and I can tell the House that in spite of the continuing concern that we have about the Indian variant, we are increasing our vaccination programme at such a rate that we can now ask everybody over 30 to come forward, Mr. Speaker.
Is that true? Like, I've had my first job, but it's now 3 weeks, and I've not even had a letter for my second job. I know people in England that are waiting 12 weeks for their jobs still. This is people that are over 40, still waiting more than 12 weeks for their second job. So, again, I don't think he's right. I think he's stretching the
Mr.
truth
Speaker,
there.
it's no good the Prime Minister
Mr. Speaker.
attacking me. It's his former chief advisor who's looking back and telling the world
True
how
that.
useless the Prime Minister was in taking key decisions. His former advisor. One of the most serious points made this morning is that the Prime Minister failed to recognise the severity of this virus until it was too late, dismissing it as, quote from this morning, another scare story, like the swine flu. Does the Prime Minister recognise
swine flu wasn't a scare story either.
And if so, will he apologise for being...
Like, I just realised how insane that line is. It's like he said that so Boris Johnson, like today, Dominic Cummings said that Boris Johnson thought COVID-19 was a scare story, like swine flu. Swine flu wasn't a scare story either. Loads of people. That was a pretty big pandemic. Epidemic. Pandemic. Yeah, it was an epidemic.
This virus posed.
Did you? No, you didn't.
I don't think anybody could credibly accuse this government of being complacent about the threat that this virus posed.
I think the government were complacent about the threat the virus posed.
At any point, we have worked flat out, Mr. Speaker, to minimise loss of life, to protect the NHS, while they have flip-flopped, Mr. Speaker, from one position to another, backing curfews one day, opposing it the next, backing lockdowns one.
We're 3 questions in to being grilled on his COVID response, and he's already projecting an attack in Keir Starmer. Fair, I mean, Keir has flip-flopped a bit, but not so much that you can put the blame for COVID-19 on Labour. Boris, this is your fault.
One day opposing the next, calling for tougher border controls one day, then saying that quarantine is a blunt instrument the next. Mr. Speaker, we have got on with the job of protecting the people of this country from one of the worst pandemics in living memory, if not...
You know what the irony of what he just said is, and this is something that's going to come back to bite him, whether it's in a year, 2 years, or just next week. When he's attacking what Labour said, Labour were saying that to work with government, to support government. They said those things directly to be on the same side as Boris Johnson, only for him to turn around like a month later and use it as a weapon against him. Politics, you need to have consensus with people in politics for it to work properly and be healthy, and he's burning every single bridge he has with the opposition. It's going to end up where he's just got no place, and nothing he does is going to get any support.
The worst in living memory. We have,
and then it's only a matter of time till he starts burning the support of his own side.
Speaker, to the loyal opposition opposite.
Mr. Speaker, I can see that the evidence of his former advisor is really getting to the Prime Minister this morning in that response.
Oh, Keith,
another incredibly serious statement from the Prime Minister's former advisor this morning concerns the conduct of the Health Secretary.
This is the good one.
Including an allegation that the Health Secretary misled other ministers and officials
signing his resignation now.
Now, I don't expect the Prime Minister to respond to that, but can he confirm from this morning's evidence...
Oh, people wanted to respond.
Prime Minister,
can
he confirm,
get him out.
Did the Cabinet Secretary advise him, the Prime Minister, that he, the Cabinet Secretary, had,
I don't think that's Michael Gove.
Secretary's honesty?
Come on, he lied. We know he lied.
The answer to that is no, Mr. Speaker. And I'm afraid I haven't had the benefit of seeing the evidence that he's bringing to the House. But I must say that I think what the people of this country want us all.
Is he that arrogant that he has not watched and doesn't know what Dominic Cummings said earlier on today? That's staggering. That's absolutely staggering. And it just supports what Dominic Cummings has been saying about him and his attitude towards COVID-19. He's just not taking it seriously.
With the delicate business
of
trying to reopen our economy and restore people's freedoms, get back to our way of life by rolling out the vaccine. I would have thought that was a much more profitable line of inquiry for the right honourable gentleman today. And that's why I think the people of this country want us to focus on.
I'd rather have a government that told the truth.
Both ways.
Call me crazy.
Either his former advisor is telling the truth, in which case the Prime Minister should answer the allegation, Or the
he's
Prime
lawyering
Minister
up.
has to
He's
suggest that
lawyering
his
up.
former advisor is not telling the truth, which raises serious questions about the Prime Minister's judgment in appointing him in the first place.
It's actually
There's
very
a pattern
good.
of behaviour here.
Oh, he's
There
getting.
was clearly a lack of planning.
We're getting some
poor
forensic
decision-making,
stuff
and
today,
a lack
people.
Of transparency. And a Prime Minister who was absent from the key decisions, including 5 early COBRA meetings.
Because
and
he was
who
writing a
to
book.
quote his former advisor, 1,000% too obsessed with the media. But another central allegation briefed overnight is that the Prime Minister delayed the circuit break over the autumn half-term
Oh, I didn't hear
because,
this.
quote, COVID was only killing 80-year-olds.
What?
I remind the Prime Minister that over 83,000 people over 80 lost their lives to this virus, and that his decision to delay for 40 days from the SAGE guidance on the 21st of September until the 31st of October will be seen as one of the single biggest
I
failings
can't believe what I
of
just
the
heard.
last year.
What the hell?
Now having been told of the evidence, does the Prime Minister accept that he used the words COVID was only killing 80-year-olds, or words to those effect?
He's going to lie again.
Hi, Minister.
It's a bit of a pointless
Mr.
question.
Speaker,
because he's just going to say, no, I didn't.
We saw what happened.
Why are they not
during
doing
the
it? What a
pandemic,
scumbag
and particularly he talks about the September
existence is.
lockdown and
He's not
my
human.
approach to it. And,
I don't think he's human.
The very, very difficult
What
decision
a
that
piece
the
of
country
shit.
faced. And of course, this will be a matter
What
for the
a piece of
inquiry
shit.
to go into. But we have an objective test, Mr. Speaker. In
What's
the
he
sense
on
that,
about?
there was a circuit breaker of the kind he describes in Wales. It did not work, and I'm afraid, Mr. Speaker, I'm absolutely confident that we took the decisions in the best interests of the British people.
I can't believe what I'm hearing.
When it
Like,
comes
what
to
the hell?
hindsight, Mr. Speaker, I could
Hindsight?
just
Oh, he's
remind
away-
the right honourable gentleman.
Oh, he's away to
that he
try and have a
actually-
joke.
I mean, he denied this at the time, but and then had to correct it. But he voted to stay in the European Medicines Agency, Mr. Speaker, which would have made it impossible.
What's this got to
which
do
would have
with
made it
anything?
impossible for us to
Keith,
do
like,
the vaccine
what the
rollout.
fuck
at
are
the
you
pace
on
that we
about,
have.
son? What the hell? Come on, Keith. Slaughter
Speaker,
him,
it's not
please.
me giving evidence this morning, it's his former advisor. And I note the Prime Minister's careful not to refute these allegations.
Yeah, that is a very good point here.
Mr. Speaker,
He's not
what we're
denying
seeing
anything.
today is
He's
the
just
latest chapter
projecting it
of a
onto
story
other
of confusion,
areas of
chaos and deadly misjudgments from this government.
deadly misjudgment.
From a Prime Minister governing by press release, not a plan. In the last 24 hours,
Again,
we've
this
seen
was
the
all
same
coming out in the
mistakes
Dominic
made
Cummings
again,
meeting.
with the ridiculous way 1.7 million people in Bolton, Burnley, Bedford, Blackburn, Kirklees, Hounslow, Leicester and North Tyneside have been treated. In the light of the drip of these very serious allegations and the failure of the Prime Minister to provide even basic answers,
I mean,
and continuing mistakes.
the only
affecting
thing that
millions
separates
of people,
Boris Johnson from the guy
does
that
the
runs
Prime Minister
Belarus
now
is that
recognise
Boris
he must
Johnson isn't
bring forward
kidnapping
the timing of
journalists
a public
yet.
inquiry into COVID,
We're in the
and
same
it should
sort of
start
territory
this
here.
summer
This is just
and
ridiculous.
as soon as possible.
I just want to say before the Prime Minister answers this next question, you're probably going to hear a lot of references to the Dominic Cummings committee meeting that was held earlier today with the Health and Social Care Committee and the Science Committee. They were looking at lessons learned during the COVID pandemic. If you want to watch that sitting in full, just go down to the channel. I streamed the whole thing and it should be live and ready to watch now. So yeah, let's get back to this.
No, Mr. Speaker, as I've said before, I'm not going to concentrate valuable official time on that now, whilst we're still battling a pandemic. And I thought, actually, that was what the House had agreed on. And, Mr. Speaker, he continues to play these pointless political games whilst we get on with delivering on the people's priorities. 14 new hospitals, 8,771 more police on our streets. Now, we're getting on with sorting out the railways, Mr. Speaker. We're giving the young people the opportunity of home ownership in a way they never have before, with 95% mortgages. And we've vaccinated.
He's talking shit, by the way, people. This is just bluster. This is crap. Everything he just said in this answer is crap. He's ignoring the questions that have been put into him, and he is ignoring what has been said by his second in command. He's talking shit
of the British people. That's really what they're focused on.
And I'm just going to interrupt that little ramble of shit there to say that the Dominic Cummings sitting seems to have restarted again. So they've already started their afternoon sitting. As soon as PMQ's finished, I will go back to that.
Stay in the European
What a day.
Medicines Agency. They vacillate, Mr. Speaker. We vaccinate. They deliberate. We deliver.
Tom Tugendal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What an
I'm sure
idiot
my
Boris
right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, remembers with great fondness his trip of July last year to the Discovery School in Kings Hill. But
If it's a will you agree with me question, remember, they get
meeting
skipped
with
now.
Tony Hudgell, an amazing and inspirational young boy who had at that point already raised £1.5 million for charity and been awarded by my right honourable friend.
Oh, so this is about the law for abused children getting abused of parents, lifetimes in jail.
Will he join Tony and Tony's parents, Paula and Mark, and me, and many others around the country in campaigning for Tony's Law, New Clause 56 to the Policing, Crime and Sentencing Bill? This is a...
I will just say here that there is definitely a case for stronger punishments to be put onto people, but at the same time, I absolutely hate the way that this current government is trying to make every crime a life sentence. It ignores the problems in society. There's a lot of problems in society which leads to things like abuse and all sorts of nasty stuff that happens in society. By just locking people in jail for life, we're ignoring the problems. We're not dealing with the root causes of these issues, which a lot of the time are poverty.
A very minor change.
I kind of support what
you're saying. To a
very
important bill that would bring child abuse sentencing.
I don't like the peace sentencing in courts. It's a bit of a weird one.
I know he has put his heart into this space.
Come on, Tom.
And I'm sure
just ask the question.
Look forward to his support.
I'm Minister.
I thank my honourable friend, and of course I remember Tony very well. I remember his incredible campaign and the amount of money he raised, and I thank him for it. And all I can say is it is very, very important that cases like that, injustices such as that suffered by Tony, do receive the full force of the law. And it is people who commit serious offences against children can receive exactly the same penalties as those who commit serious offences against adults. But we will keep this under review, Mr. Speaker. And if there is a gap in the law, I will study his amendment very closely. If there is a gap in the law, we will make sure that we remedy it.
Leader of the SNP.
That's a strange question. Strange answer there.
Speaker, can I associate myself with the remarks of Prime
He's
Minister
in the House today.
No
more Rose Filter.
The song "You'll Never Walk Alone."
The rain is over.
128,000 people have died of coronavirus in the United Kingdom. This morning, the Prime Minister's most senior former advisor, Dominic Cummings, apologised on behalf of the UK government. He said, "When the public needed us most, we failed.
Again,
we know that the Prime Minister made a series of catastrophic errors throughout the crisis.
Hello,
he
everyone that's watching today, by the way.
When he should have been leading efforts.
I don't have the chat open, it's glitching for some reason.
He was
Can't see
too
anything.
slow to go into lockdown. He failed to secure our borders. He sent millions of people back to their offices prematurely. There is no doubt that these mistakes cost many thousands of lives. When even a disgraced figure like Dominic Cummings is willing to own up and apologise, isn't it time that the Prime Minister does the same?
Mr. Speaker, I take full responsibility for everything that has happened, and I've said, as I've said.
So now he's taking responsibility, but
both in this House
just
and
remember
elsewhere,
that 10 minutes ago he just said it was nothing to do with him.
The people of this country have experienced. But I maintain my point that the government acted throughout with the intention to save life and protect the NHS.
Take it seriously
with
until like
scientific
November.
advice. That's exactly what we did.
It's not.
Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The evidence we've heard this morning is extraordinary, but sadly not surprising. It paints a familiar pattern of behaviour. A negligent Prime Minister, more concerned with his own self-interest than the interests of the United Kingdom. When people were dying, the United Kingdom government was considering chickenpox parties and joking about injecting the Prime Minister with COVID live on TV. We had a circus act when we needed serious government. Isn't it the case that what the country needed leadership most, the Prime Minister was missing in action? Thousands have paid the ultimate price for his failure. When will the Prime Minister finally accept responsibility for the failures of his government?
Never.
Mr. Speaker, as I've said repeatedly in this House, I take full responsibility for everything that the government did and will continue to do so. And one of the reasons we've set up an independent public inquiry is I believe the people of this country do deserve to have daylight shone on all the issues he raised. I must say I don't recognise the events that he describes.
I mean, Dominic Cummings is literally told
that we acted
two committees this morning
with the intention
of
saving life, of protecting the NHS, and of taking the country through the worst pandemic for 100 years. And I think I think it's also true that we're in a much more fortunate position now, thanks to the efforts of the British people and the fastest vaccine rollout in Europe, and I'm grateful for that as well.
A rushed vaccine rollout is the term you're looking for there, Boris. Rushed and then slowed down till
Cumbria sees significant numbers of tourists in any normal year.
So who is
not
this?
Just lakes.
The speaker not telling us who's speaking today. It says Mark Jenkinson, Conservative.
With a real opportunity for the UK this year, for the UK hospitality industry this year, as people choose to holiday here. Would my right honourable friend consider a short break in my constituency where I might
piss off, man! What the hell?
Well, I'm so grateful to my honourable friend. I would love to come and meet the alpaca called Boris. But more importantly, we want to support the tourism in his constituency, which is why we've so far provided over 25 billion of support, including 1.5 billion to support projects such as the Carnegie Theatre Trust. And since this week is English Tourism Week, Mr. Speaker, I encourage everyone to make the most of the tourism on their doorstep.
Stephen Farry. Stephen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Labour.
The EU settlement scheme closes on the 30th of June. While the Home Office has finally published guidance on late applications, the government is failing to provide clarity on what will happen to those who miss the deadline and then fall under the remit of illegal working legislation. So can the Prime Minister assure the House
They'll be seen as being
that
illegal,
EU citizens or non-EU family members who miss the deadline will not face potential criminal liability if they continue to go into work?
I wouldn't hold your tongue. I wouldn't count your chickens, mate.
I'm sure that the law will be extremely merciful to anybody who finds themselves in a difficult position. But I would just remind the honourable gentleman that so far 5.4 million EU nationals have applied successfully for the EU settlement scheme, which is about, as far as I can remember, about 2 million more EU nationals than we thought were in the country in the first place.
Simon Baines. Thank you, Mr.
Simon
Speaker.
Baines.
Would the Prime Minister join with me in praising Wrexham and Denbighshire councils for the dynamic
off, mate.
and
I can't be asked for this. Ask a real question.
To champion those wonderful and beautiful spots.
Not even a real question.
Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When any member of this House is suspended for 10 days or more because of a Standards Committee report, constituents can then recall.
Oh, this is a great question.
When the independent expert panel suspend a member,
yeah, this is ridiculous. There's no way that this would stand up in court.
Closing loopholes in legislation.
If you get suspended, you should be suspended. That's it.
Legislation to close this particular loophole. And does he agree that it would be completely dishonourable for any member to exploit that loophole and should instead do the decent thing and resign?
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, I will take that. I take that point very seriously. I will study what the implications of what he says. I think if he's referring to any,
we're referring to Rob Roberts,
member who's recently had the whip
sexual misconduct
taken away, then he can take it that member has already had condign punishment.
That is bullshit. That is total bullshit. Like, that is not punishing. He's still an MP. He still gets paid. He still gets the pension. He should not be an MP.
Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last Thursday, about 1 o'clock in the morning, three young people popped up to Mackie D's, as you do. They noticed a Leyland shop massively on fire and did they drive past?
Near Blackpool.
No, they rang the fire brigade, they stopped, they recruited a passerby, they climbed over fences and walls to raise the alarm for the residents living in the flats above them.
What's she on about?
Now, during the pandemic, community spirit's been really important to all of us keeping going. So does the Prime Minister share my admiration for Kim Zach?
Honourable friend Fania and
sorry, we
Robin,
are not answering
they
rigged questions that come from the Prime Minister. Ridiculous. We're only answering real questions.
4.3 million children, Mr. Speaker, and rising, growing up in poverty, including some 18,000
real question,
in Harrow.
thank you.
So will he agree to put right the error of a previous Prime Minister and commit to publish a strategy to tackle child poverty and ensure that no child is left behind?
Should be a yes.
Mr. Speaker, it's vital that we tackle child poverty, and that's why we are uniting and levelling up across the country with the
so he's got no plans because he's just spitting buzzwords.
If
he had a plan, he would say yes, and he would tell us the plan.
We're also seeing fewer households now.
And now we're getting rhetoric.
In poverty.
Now we're getting rhetoric to say government's getting a good job.
Accept that there is more to be done.
Although he didn't mention money, so that's
Thank you,
something.
Mr. Speaker. I very much welcome the fact that government is investing.
Actually, I just want to say that there. I don't think he's mentioned money at all in any question today, which is pretty much a first, because normally his answers include, we're giving loads of money to them.
Investing heavily in upgrading the rail networks across the country, including opening lines that have previously been closed.
Anthony
But as a
Brown.
Conservative government, we've got a particular responsibility to the taxpayer to ensure value for money. East West Rail in my constituency's business case is largely based on commuting, but the pandemic means we're in the middle of a workplace revolution. If people work from home on average 2 days a week in future, that means a 40% reduction in commuting. Will my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, commit to doing a review of the business case?
Here's me. I thought you were asking Dominic Cummings questions here. I'm glad he made sure that when he was speaking to the Prime Minister during the Prime Minister's freaking questions.
I think my honourable friend is a great campaigner for Cambridgeshire and the rights of people of Cambridgeshire. However, my strong feeling is it would be a mistake now to go slow on investment in infrastructure purely on the basis that we think people will start working from home. In my long experience of this is that people need to travel, they will travel, the commuter bustle will come back, Mr. Speaker, and it needs to come back.
The commuter bus.
Thank you, Mr.
Buses never went anywhere.
The global minimum rate for corporate tax would help tackle tax avoidance by large multinational corporations and online giants. It would stop them undercutting British businesses who pay their fair share, and it would make a transformational difference to high streets and town centres at the heart of communities across the UK. Why is the Prime Minister the only G7 leader not to support this proposal? Why is he on the side of tax avoiders instead of British businesses and communities?
What's the scoop, Boris? What's the scoop?
Mr. Speaker, it was only a few months ago that the Labour Party, the Labour front bench, opposed the corporation tax increases that we put in. They're now opposed to the government's ability to cut corporation tax. Which side are they on? They've got to make their minds up.
I mean, we've got to remember they are actually the opposition.
To Robert Neal. Robert.
You've got to laugh at Boris Johnson complaining that the opposition is opposing everything he does. It's literally their freaking job to oppose him.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Like me, the Prime Minister represents a constituency in London's commuter land, so he'll be well aware of the small businesses, sole traders, many of them, who operate the coffee stores and news agents and so on our railway stations. Their incomes have been absolutely decimated during the pandemic.
So's everyone's, mate.
But they're finding, like my constituent Sharma at Chislehurst Station, that when they seek to get a reduced level of rent to reflect their reduced turnover, the train operating companies claim that a funding agreement put in place with the Department of Transport doesn't give them the discretion to do so.
There you go.
The department appears to say differently, and they've been going around in circles for
Welcome to dealing with the UK government.
Months trying to get an answer. Will the Prime Minister use the authority of his office, please, to bang heads together and get a solution for them? Because if they go broke and we have empty units, that's no income.
The Prime Minister doesn't have authority. He can have an idea, but at the end of the day, they've got to be voted on in the House of Commons. He's not a dictator yet.
For anybody.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my right honourable friend. We've provided
total ignorance of the actual system here. You know, it's like Boris, make things happen. It's like, you actually can't
March
make things
of last year, all train operators, including South Eastern in his constituency, are able to offer business support to their stations. I understand the point he makes about the discrepancy of views. Can I undertake him to arrange a meeting with him and the relevant minister to take it forward?
Let's go to Rachel Muskell.
Muskell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have asked the Prime Minister a series of questions about charities. In November, he promised support. By March, he turned his back. But this month, he broke that promise, giving them nothing this winter. His words and deeds are as unfaithful as his principles and beliefs. There's neither the commitment to honour his word, the capacity to care, nor the compassion to act. Does the Prime Minister really believe that charity is all about supporting him and his lifestyle, or recognise charities now 10 billion in debt and struggling to survive need government support to help people in real need?
I mean, the crux of this question is that the Prime Minister is full of shit, basically. But he's not going to tell you that in his answer.
Charities perform.
He's not going to say, Mr. Speaker, I think you'll find that the country is in a great place. We've got vaccinations for jobs, but at the core of the whole thing, Your Honour, I am full of shit. He's never going to say that.
He should.
That's what happens in my
society and in our lives, and we need them. And that's why we've supported charity shops throughout the lockdown with grants, the restart grants, and the roadmap means that those shops are now able to open again. But in addition, we had a £750 million targeted package of support for charities, helping more than 14,000.
That's the first time I think he said we're giving loads of money to someone for no reason.
Including funding for hospices, homelessness charities, and shelters for victims of domestic abuse.
I've just realised we've got no questions from the Northern Irish constituencies today.
The fishing industry in East Anglia has had a hard time of it in recent years. However,
this guy, he just my bell end alarm just went off there. It's like boop boop. Boop. Conservative bell end alert.
With Brexit done, albeit in a way that left many disappointed, there is now an opportunity to turn the corner.
Brexit's done. We've got an opportunity to turn the corner.
The Anglian fisheries strategy sets out an exciting and ambitious programme for the future. Is the Prime Minister able to say how the government will work with fishing communities such as that in Lowestoft to revive the industry in East Anglia?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I thank my honourable friend for what he's doing to champion the
I thank my honourable friend for answering the one question I'm going to answer.
His reef plan, I think it's got lots of interesting ideas which we will take forward as part of our £100 million package to support the fishing industry.
It looks like he's got a bit of bounce in his face.
To take advantage of those opportunities which are coming very, very swiftly down the track towards.
What opportunities? There are no opportunities, you liar.
Ben Lay. Diolch, Mr. Speaker.
NHS
and social care staff in Wales are due to receive
a
£500 bonus in recognition of their hard work during the pandemic. But staff on universal credit stand to lose out due to the way in which the reward is recognised in regulations as earned income. So instead of receiving a thank you bonus at the end of the month, many NHS and social care staff will be punished with a deduction of up to 63% for the universal credit. Will the Prime Minister look to amend Regulation 55 of the Universal Credit Regulations to create an exemption to ensure that all NHS and social care staff in Wales benefit fully from this well-deserved bonus?
Prime Minister. I'm grateful to him for raising that point, and of course I want to repeat my gratitude to the nurses of this country,
I sent some
the
money.
NHS and social care staff who've done incredible work throughout this pandemic. He makes a particular point about the UC, the tapering in universal credit, and I will make sure that he has a meeting with the relevant minister who will set out the detail on the issue he's raised.
Let's go to Jonathan
no money for the poor, I guess.
Jonathan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of my constituent Seema Misra and other wrongly convicted sub-postmasters, I'm grateful that the vital inquiry of Sir William Williams into this scandal has now been given more teeth. However, there is widespread concern shared by Post Office CEO Nick Reed that the compensation received by the sub-postmasters who were party to the civil litigation at the High Court was simply not fair. Can I urge the Prime Minister to ensure that these civil litigant sub-postmasters will be included in the anticipated government compensation?
Whatever happens with this government compensation claim, they need to compensate everyone. Everyone that has been affected needs to be have it wiped off their criminal records because they did no wrong. This was a systems error that led to postmasters getting called fraudsters and put to jail. They should all get the money they deserve, and they should get the money in a way that's not going to screw them over in the future. For instance, let's say in the future action gets taken against the company that led to them getting jailed, and that company's then got to pay a fine. Let's hope that however government words this compensation, that it's not done in such a way that if another pot of money appears within this case in the future, that it's not like that the peoples have a claim to that too, and that it doesn't end up like the tainted blood scandal where they give a little bit of compensation knowing that in the future there would be a big compensation claim, and basically writing a contract in such a way that stops them claiming from the second bit. Let's hope that they do the right thing here, but This is a Conservative government, so do not expect them to do the right thing. Expect them to do whatever protects themselves, protects their own interests, and stops the government basically having to pay money out. Because this is what they do.
Scheme.
Prime Minister.
I thank you for raising this issue. I might say a tragic case of
it really is actually tragic. I agree with
met some
the PM
of the post
on that.
office, the postmasters and sub-postmasters who've been affected by this miscarriage of justice. As he knows, the government wasn't party to the initial litigation nor the settlement that was agreed, but we are determined to ensure that postmasters, sub-postmasters are fairly compensated for what happened.
Well, let's hope he sticks by his word on this one.
Angus Brendan MacNeill.
That's my man, Angus
Mr.
MacNeill.
Speaker, Brexit and Scottish independence are indeed very different, but referendums are much the same. Now, in 2016, without interference, the European Union respected the UK in the Brexit referendum process. Unfortunately, the last Scottish referendum did not see Scotland get the same respect. London politicians promised Scotland a place in the European Union.
And we didn't
clearly,
get it.
they won that referendum very clearly on broken promises. In the autumn, when the Scots government has dealt with the health effects of the pandemic,
Scotland was lied to.
Require independence, as Norway and Ireland proved. So, Prime Minister, will Scotland be shown the same respect in the UK as the UK got in the EU? And this time, can our democracy not be interfered with and our referendum certainly not blocked?
It's a very fair question, because in the Scottish referendum there was all sorts of interference from London and other places, and it was just unacceptable.
We respected the referendum result of 2014, which was
based on a lie.
Substantial majority in favour of.
Right, so let's just, like what he just said there, for once, substantial majority, it was like 52-48. It was more or less the same sort of result as the Brexit referendum, right? I'm not even going to waste time with it. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. Scotland were told that if we vote to remain in the UK, we are doing so we can protect our place in the world. Now, this is not people making this up. This is still on the government's website today. You can go and read this yourself. You can read David Cameron's government's promise, the Conservative Party's promise to Scotland, that if we stay in the UK, it will protect our place in the world. It will protect our place in the EU. It will protect our international trade. 2-3 years later, that was thrown out the window, completely ignored. Scotland was sold independence on a lie. Remaining in the Union on a complete lie, and that is a fact.
Remaining in the UK, keeping our wonderful country together, not breaking it
It's
up.
not wonderful. The UK is a crap hole.
Rightly
crap
voted
hole.
For, and they did so in the belief
hole.
that it was a once-in-a-generation event.
It wasn't once in a generation. That was the Conservatives that said
Mr.
that.
Speaker, for almost 500 years, the Royal Navy
So who
has
is
protected
this?
our country from foes and our
Alicia
freedom of our
Cairns.
friends around the world. The pride of our Navy, HMS Queen Elizabeth, sailed this week with her strike group. Within her, she carries the British values of freedom, justice and democracy.
And nuclear missiles.
So can my right honourable friend tell me, she makes her way from the Mediterranean to the South China Sea, what are his plans for the future of her white ensign?
Prime Minister.
What
It was
even was that
fantastic to be
question?
aboard HMS
What
Queen
is-
Elizabeth, which is a vessel.
What is the future of the Queen Elizabeth aircraft carrier? I would imagine it's to serve the Royal Navy for another 25 years, considering it's a pretty new boat.
Longer than the Palace of Westminster
what a waste of question.
itself,
What?
Mr. Speaker, and forms a more eloquent statement in many ways than many of the many speeches or indeed interventions that we've heard this afternoon about Britain's role in the world. And
We have no role
our
in this world.
determination
We're the laughing
to
stock.
expand
As Eurovision has
shipbuilding,
demonstrated,
and
the UK is
expand
a
our
laughing
naval
stock.
presence. Not only is good for the UK and good for the world, but good for jobs and growth around the country.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. COVID has now triggered the first global rise in extreme
Says
poverty
Liam Byrne,
this century.
Birmingham.
But at the G7, the Prime Minister could act. He can ask leaders to reallocate the IMF's $1 trillion worth of special drawing rights and restock the World Bank's £83 billion worth of IDA fund. This is a multi-billion-pound package of support for the world's poorest. So will the Prime Minister today commit to leading this argument at the G7 so a pandemic of disease doesn't now become a pandemic of poverty?
Liam, did you have to use buzzwords?
It's great to see him in his place, I say, Mr. Speaker. And actually, I've already had always great to see him in his place. I've had conversations on that very matter already with Christina Georgieva.
Laura Trott.
Laura Trott.
One of the many awful things about the past year has been the inability to visit family and friends in hospital. It's caused immense anguish for many of my constituents. We're seeing some progress locally, and I hope with the brilliant rollout of the vaccine we will see more. But can the Prime Minister inform the House when we will see normal visiting hours resumed for all hospitals nationwide?
What a waste of a question. Laura Trott is one of the people who's been sitting on the committees that have been grilling Dominic Cummings all day. She could have asked a way better question. Actually, we're not even wanting to hear the answer. She could have asked a much better question than that. She has been sitting in that committee room all morning. She knows what Dominic Cummings says. She knows the crap that he's been speaking. She knows that the evidence is real, and he's got photographs, he's got data stamps, he's got all that. Yet she asks about hospital visiting hours. Really? Really?
She understands very well and will be updating the guidance as soon as it's
Makes
possible.
Makes my piss boil, this stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tala, 13,
Zara Sultan.
Bula, just 5 years old.
Last question.
Her big sister Yara, aged 9. 3 Palestinian children killed in an Israeli airstrike. The Israeli military murdered 63 other children and 245 Palestinians in its recent assault on Gaza. The call for Palestinian freedom has never been louder, but this Conservative government is complicit in its denial. It has approved more than £400 million in arms to Israel since 2015. So can the Prime Minister look me in the eye and tell me that British-made weapons or components weren't used in the war crimes that killed these 3 children and hundreds of other Palestinians?
Come on, Boris.
Prime Minister, we shouldn't use props, just to remind them.
Shut up, Leslie.
Mr. Speaker, I think that the whole House understands that nobody wants to see any more.
Did our weapons get used, Boris? This was a closed question.
And everybody wants to.
Easy question. This: were British weapons used or not?
A de-escalation. And as for the position of the British government, I think that it's probably common ground across most members of this House.
Don't say you go for a two-state solution.
What we want to see is a two-state solution.
Are you serious? Two-state solution, yet we're refusing to recognise Palestine as a state. There can't be a two-state solution until we recognise Palestine as a state. This is the get-out line of conservatism. This is just a nonsense. This is a nonsense. Terrible nonsense.
That is what the UK government has campaigned for many, many years, and that continues to be our position.
Wow.
I'm now suspending the House for 3 minutes.
So there you go. Prime Minister's questions today ended with an utter bombshell. The Prime Minister was asked if any British weapons were used to bomb Palestine, to bomb Gaza, to bomb the West Bank, if British weapons caused the death of 3 children who we've seen in the House of Commons. The response to that was John Leslie moaning about the way the question asked him, Boris Johnson saying he wanted a two-state solution, but obviously never saying when we're going to recognise Palestine as a state. Considering what's been going on this morning and the questions that could have been asked, I think Keir Starmer actually did all right. He asked some really good questions. Boris Johnson did not have answers for the questions. There was people in today's session which could have asked way better questions because they've been at the Dominic Cummings meetings all morning. They know what's been happening. They could have asked questions like that, but they didn't. All around, it's a bit of a crap sitting. I would say it was a bit of a crap sitting today. It was just there. It was just there. So anyway, if you've been watching, thanks for watching. Hit subscribe. Follow for more. Starting in about literally 1 minute after this stream goes on, we'll have another stream going on with part 2 of the Dominic Cummings committee meeting thing going on, talking about lessons learned during COVID-19 pandemic. So I'll see you all for now. Just sit on the channel for a minute and the stream will